Number 10. The Rushmore Room. Built by Gutzon Borglum, 1925, this chamber behind Abraham Lincoln's third eye was meant to hold documents and artifacts most significant to what makes America, America. Yeah, not country music and muscle cars, of course, but like the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, you know, the important stuff. At first, the idea was a huge inscription to be carved under the figures. It would describe the 9 most important events in US history from 1777 to 1906, basically Washington to Roosevelt. They realized it wouldn't be big enough to read, so they thought up this new plan: dig out a secret room within the mountain for the records to live. A list of famous Americans and contributions to the world of science, industry, and art, all in one spot. Unfortunately, Borglum passed away before it was completed, and World War II started, halting construction. The unfinished hall houses 16 panels within a teak wood box, within a titanium vault, within a granite casing. Of course, not accessible to the public. Yeah. Secret stuff. Vault within a vault type stuff, huh? Okay. Number 9. Eiffel's apartment. When Gustav Eiffel designed the tower, drawn into the plans, he included a very subtle, very private little apartment for himself at the very top. I mean, why not, right? Imagine that view. When he passed in 1923, he left the place in mint condition. All of his furnishings exactly where he left them. Today, the apartment houses only mannequins of Eiffel himself. He's just like washing the dishes, you know what I mean? He's just like... Apparently tons of people would offer up literally a small fortune to rent the private room for just a single night, but Eiffel always refused. Apparently only Thomas Edison was granted access for, quote, logical thinking. Dude, this place is awesome. I wonder if he had bugs, you know? Like if it had an elevator, it had bugs. Hundo OP. This place is also like 8 times bigger than every university house I lived in. Like look at that ceiling height. This place is beautiful. Number 8. Library apartments. If you've seen Good Will Hunting, you're gonna love this next one. Apparently there's more than just bookworms that live at the library. When libraries were built in New York more than a century ago, they needed people to take care of them. These buildings were often heated by coal. Library custodians, along with their families, used to live inside small hidden apartments located above, under, and behind lots of New York public libraries. Today, of course, these secret apartments are either remodeled into storage closets or offices. Dude, can you imagine? Libraries closed, just bored, wandering down to find a new book every day? Like, you'd be a genius. That's like free school right there. I'd definitely be riding the trolleys all day long though, you know? Just like riding the ladders across the walls. There's only like a dozen of these secret libraries that still exist in New York. I'm surprised this isn't a Netflix or TLC series called I Grew Up in a Library. Number 7. Brooklyn Bridge Bootleggers. Should have been a pro hockey team. The Brooklyn Bootleggers. John Roebling designed the Brooklyn Bridge, which opened in 1883. Apparently he was able to fund the design and construction with the help of liquor vendors. Okay, I can see where this is heading. Since the anchorages of the bridges and the voids between them and the walls were neither intensely hot or freezing cold, so storing alcohol in them made sense. So Roebling rented out the caverns below the entrances to various alcohol vendors in the late 19th century. Alright, right around the time where they're like, should we make this stuff illegal? The bridge itself was built with tons of passages and compartments under it. They were actually rented out for storage, businesses, and apartments. In order to fund the $15 million to finish the bridge, elites paid up to $5 grand a year to store and cool their hooch there. Imagine during the Prohibition time too? Pretty pricey and sneaky stuff if you ask me. Number 6. Trafalgar Square Bobbies. If you're familiar with the London area, you've probably seen this. This little post office lamp post looking thing. It's actually a fully functioning police station. One of the world's smallest, actually. According to historians, it was built in 1926 so that police could be close to the protests in the busy square. Basically the first CCTV, I guess. At the end of World War I, a temporary police box outside of the Trafalgar Square station needed to be renovated, and instead, it was decided to build a less obvious, more subtle station. Something a little invisible to criminals. So they built one inside a lamppost. It was the first to actually have a mirrored interior bood light. When we went from candles to those flamethrower lights in the UK, it had a direct phone line to Scotland Yard and all. And when the phone rang, the mirrors on top spun, just like the sirens we all see on emergency vehicles today. Like a mini bat symbol almost. It's so small too. It's now used for, of course, brooms and mops. Can you imagine? Yeah, you're under arrest. Just close the door behind you, please. Thank you. Turn around, turn around! Number 5. St. Mark's Crypt. Beneath the presbytery and deep inside the chapel sits a crypt, one that for centuries has been the home of St. Mark himself. St. Mark's Basilica in Venice, one of the most visited churches in the world. Every day, thousands of tourists visit to admire the mosaics and marble it houses inside. A true masterpiece and celebration of art and culture. And old. In 1063, the construction of an ageless crypt to hold the remains of the evangelist Mark. The ruins of previous buildings were transformed into a single crypt in which the new basilica would be built over top. When the body of St. Mark was found, it was placed with full honors inside this crypt and built over. In 1563, the Brotherhood moved inside the church, and in 1604, the crypt was officially sealed and closed forever. Dude, I've seen the Crypt Keeper, alright? I'm not going down there. No way, dude. You serious? Like 1,000-year-old bones? Number 4. Club 33. I know what you're thinking. Hey Kyle, where's this rager of a nightclub located? Well, it's a little complicated. You see, it's above the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. For real. You see, we're really getting into some secretive stuff now. Club 33 is the official Disneyland members-only lounge for dining and drinking. And I'm not talking like a fast pass for rides or anything. Not even the elites had memberships. It's hidden within an attraction next to Walt Disney's actual apartment. The entrance of the club was at 33 Royal Street, hence the address plate with just the number 33 on it. People never even notice the club because even if they do, the chances of being invited behind that door, it's next to slim. After Disney's death, the demand was lifted and those willing to pay a small $50,000 initiation fee and of course $15,000 annually per person are implored to visit. All that to drink like a gin and tonic out of Chip from Beauty and the Beast? Yeah, I'll pass. Number 3. Lake Erie. Lake Erie is harboring a huge ancient secret and has been for the past million years, which not a lot of people know about. I didn't even know about this until today. Something absolutely massive under the water was found. And it's not Bessie or those freshwater dinosaurs. It's salt. Yeah, lakes aren't salt water, Kyle. No, but they most certainly are. See, underneath Lake Erie is a highway-long salt mine. And I say highway-long because like you need to merge and like signal down there, it's so big. The Salina Formation is the source of rock salt beneath Cleveland. It's located at the bottom of a 1,500-foot thick section of limestone bordering 11 counties under Lake Erie. Every day the 5-mile wide mine gets even bigger, football field by football field, as crew sticks explosives in the walls and blasts the salt loose. Dude, for real, I'm shook right now. Just think, next time you're fishing, just think at the bottom of that, yeah, there's trucks and a highway under there. Huh? Number 2. Hotel Tracks. Track 61 is an abandoned Metro North station located under the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York City. What makes this place spookier than New York City's other abandoned train stations is the fact that it's right under such a famous and bustling hotel you would never even know. Only accessible by one locked door on 49th Street and using private rusted elevators. Dude, I'm picturing the Batcave right now. Like, for real, right? I'm disappointed. Like whoever owns this hotel, if you're not Batman right now, what a waste. Apparently President Roosevelt would even use this track back in the day for protection when visiting New York City during World War II. They built special elevators so that presidents could drive in and out with cars right up onto the train. Okay, again, we're sure Roosevelt wasn't Batman, right? Like, cause like this is the Batcave, right? And number 1, Drum Castle. In 2013, archaeologists came across something that people apparently have missed for like the last hundreds of years. A secret medieval chamber and bathroom under one of Europe's oldest castles. Drum Castle, Scotland. It lies in Aberdeen and was built in the 1200s. It was gifted to William de Irwine in 1325 by Robert the Bruce himself. While working on a conservation project for Scotland's oldest kept castle, a wee tiny room was found perfectly preserved, equipped with the original toilet seat and all. Dr. Jonathan Clark from the FAS Heritage led the excavation. Trapped for centuries, a secret medieval chamber. The archaeologists then also discovered a second hidden chamber in the same tower, which, legend says, is where Mary Irvine hid her brother for 3 years after defeat in Battle of Culloden. Yeah, English versus Scots. That was a scary time, you know? People getting stretched to death and stuff. Gross.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the Knife-Armed Man. In 2018, while researchers were excavating a 1,200 to 1,400-year-old necropolis in northern Italy, they made a gruesome discovery that led to us learning a super interesting story of someone who lived all those years ago. Inside this necropolis, there were the remains of a man, but what set him apart from the others is that he had a knife blade prosthetic arm. Further analysis of his bones showed that his arm had been removed via blunt force trauma. Normally, all those years ago, the wounds would have killed you. If not from the loss of blood, then from infection, because of course this was a time before antibiotics, but somehow this man managed to survive it all, and in doing that, he made himself the scariest prosthetic limb I've ever heard of. He replaced his missing hand with a long knife buckled to his arm with leather straps. In our number 9 spot today, we have KV-55. This is a tomb that is referred to by a number rather than a name because we don't actually know who lies lies inside of this tomb. While this tomb had its modern discovery in 1907, we still haven't quite found the answers surrounding this mystery. To make things a little more eerie, while the walls of the actual tomb are bare, which is bizarre, as you walk down the steps towards the tomb, you'll notice there are some markings leading up to it. You'll see inscribed on the wall of the entrance the words which can be translated to, "The evil one shall not live again." If this wasn't enough to give an unsettling feeling, the coffin inside of the tomb has been desecrated, with part of the face having been removed. So all in all, we don't know a lot about what's going on down there, but it doesn't seem good. In our number 8 spot today, we have Man E. Okay, so normally when you're out in the field searching for mummies and tombs and all of that sort of archaeological business in Egypt, the containers or vessels that the past people are put in are decorated or contain some sort of drawings or writings. So in 1886, when Gaston Maspero, who was the head of Egyptian antiquities, came across a plain burial box, he was a little intrigued as to what could be inside. This box had no information as to who the person inside may or may not be, but the corpse inside was wrapped in sheepskin, which was apparently considered unclean by the ancient Egyptians. When unwrapped, it was revealed that this person had both their hands and their feet bound, and as he looked towards the face of this person, he found what appeared to be a screaming face looking back at him. Back in 1886, we didn't have the same amount of information as we do now, so of course this quickly freaked researchers out and led to everyone believing that this person must have been tortured to death. How scary that must have been. But luckily, with the things we now know, we have a much less horrific answer, thankfully. If the jaw of a person isn't strapped shut, when a body is mummified, the jaw naturally falls open, thus this horrible screaming expression. The real mystery that remains is how this mummy, who clearly wasn't considered a person of royalty, came to be buried alongside kings and queens. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Black Granite Sarcophagus. In 2018, archaeologists in Egypt found a massive black granite sarcophagus in Alexandria, Egypt that dated all the way back to 2,000 years ago. Rumors immediately started swirling about what this sarcophagus might have contained, but the best way to find out? Well, you have to open it, of course. Instead of some crazy curse being unleashed, the first thing that escaped this tomb when opened was a horrible, unbearable smell. Apparently it was so bad that the site had to be evacuated for a while before they could return to finish opening it up. When they finally were able to completely lift the lid, they found a red-brown like sewage water flooding the bottom, which is likely where that horrible smell was coming from. Other than all that gross stuff, inside the sarcophagus were the bones of 3 people. Unfortunately, the mummies did not end up being well preserved, so only the skeletal remains were still intact. It is believed that the people inside may have been soldiers from the time of pharaohs. This is believed because one of the skulls had a crack in it from an arrow. There was a bust found along with the tomb, but unfortunately, due to time past, it has been weathered beyond recognition, but that is not the only way researchers can find out where the soldiers are from and what time period they lived in. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Inca Mummies. In 1976, researchers found 2 mummies at a burial site in northern Chile. These 2 corpses belonged to 2 young women who were the victims of human ritual sacrifice. It is likely that the sacrifice they were a part of was one that was carried out by the Inca to commemorate either historical or political events, or as a response to a natural disaster. The mummies were found wearing silver ornaments, and they were surrounded by ceramic vessels, and they were wearing red robes. The red in the Inca clothing was often created using hematite or other iron oxides, but upon further inspection of these mummies, it was revealed that their red clothing held something much more dangerous. The dye used for their clothing contained cinnabar, which is a mineral rich in mercury. This was often used in the ancient world as a pigment for makeup, clothing, and painting, but handling it leads to mercury poisoning. What is strange is that researchers believe that the toxicity of cinnabar wasn't known in ancient Peru, so we aren't exactly sure why they used it in the first place, but it's thought it might have been used as protection against grave robbers. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Phaleron Delta Necropolis. In 2016, during the construction of a new library and opera house in Athens, crews accidentally stumbled upon this necropolis, which is a cemetery that is the final resting place of more than 1,500 citizens from ancient Greece. And while this is most definitely an eerie discovery and a reminder of our own morality, the horrifying discovery came when they found a small chamber within this one, and inside there were more than 80 skeletons that all had their hands shackled above their heads. How's that for a horrifying discovery? I don't know, I'm gonna say pretty good. Each of these skeletons belonged to people who died young and healthy, and while the exact cause of death is yet to be determined, all signs are pointing to some kind of mass execution. Right now, the best theory as to who these people may have been is that they may be some of the people who were a part of a coup in 632 BC that was led by Cylon against Athens. It's just strange that even after these people passed, they didn't unshackle them, but that might just be a mystery destined to stay a secret. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Ancient Curse. Alright, so of course we have to have a good old-fashioned curse that was unleashed from inside of a tomb. Okay, that might be a bit of an exaggeration, but there really was a curse found on the inside of a tomb. This tomb was the tomb of a pharaoh's official who was thought to have lived around 4,000 years ago during Egypt's 6th dynasty. It was an above-ground tomb that was shaped like a rectangular box. Inside of the tomb, they found a curse inscribed that warned anyone who dared to disturb it. The curse, roughly translated, states anything a trespasser, quote, might do against this, my tomb, the same shall be done to your property. It then goes on to warn the trespasser of his knowledge of spells and secret magic, and it threatens to fill impure intruders with a fear of seeing ghosts. These kinds of curses have been found in other tombs, and while they certainly are nothing like the ones depicted in horror movies about mummies, it might still be a little unnerving to those unearthing this discovery. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Lothagam North Pillar Site. One of the most incredible archaeological finds in Kenya led to well, it wasn't exactly a horrifying discovery, but it certainly was unexpected. Around 5,000 years ago, a tribe of herders paused by a lake in what is now Kenya in order to bury their dead. This ended up turning into one of the most massive and monumental construction projects Africa had ever seen, which is no easy feat. For 450 years, they dug into the bedrock, piled up slabs of sandstone, and buried their dead for generations with ritual ceremonies, and this led to what researchers now consider the earliest and largest monumental cemetery in Eastern Africa. Here's the one kind of unexpected thing that they found here at this site, though. Along with the bodies of those who had passed, researchers also found 405 gerbil teeth at the site. As it turns out, there's a perfectly reasonable explanation for this, and it's because they were used to make a headpiece for just one of those who had passed away. This site might not be as large and tall as some of the other monuments like the pyramids in Giza, but what makes them the most remarkable is that this site was made by the people for the people. Not for emperors or kings and queens, it was for tribe members of every age and gender buried alongside each other. In our number 2 spot today, we have the tomb of Hatshepsut. This was the 5th pharaoh of the 18th dynasty of Egypt, and she was the 2nd historically confirmed female pharaoh. She was an incredibly interesting person who we really could talk about all day, but we are here talking about tombs, so let's cut to when hers was found and unearthed. There were a few interesting things found within her tomb, but the real horrors came after when they began to examine her remains. They were actually able to find a cause of death for her and can actually attribute it to something she possessed. They found benzoprene carcinogenic skin lotion with the pharaoh, and it is believed that this gave her bone cancer. It is likely that she poisoned herself accidentally while just trying to soothe her skin. Being diagnosed with something like that with the help of modern medicine is already a horrible and painful and scary thing. I couldn't even imagine having to go through it all these years ago without any kind of treatment. In our number 1 spot today, we have this ancient mystery. Okay, so this is one of the coolest things I've ever heard, and it has me rethinking my entire career. Maybe I do want to be an archaeologist after all. Basically, researchers have found a 1,300-year-old Chinese mystery, and where did they find it? In a Tomb Raider shaft. This feels like a Hollywood blockbuster, and somehow it's just real, ancient life. While excavating a tomb in China, the team discovered the skeleton of a young man that was riddled with wounds, giving clues as to how he died. The man is estimated to have been about 25 years old, and it is thought that he was harmed and then thrown into the Tomb Raider shaft while still alive, which is absolutely gruesome. It is believed this crime took place between 640 and 680 AD. It appears as though he wasn't a thief because the shaft had begun to be refilled with soil by the time of his death, so we really aren't sure why this young man met such a cruel fate. As a true crime enthusiast, this is absolutely fascinating, and I wish we could find some answers to bring this guy's story full circle. Sometimes, though, these things are just destined to stay a secret hidden in the past.
Starting our list off at number 10, Newgrange. Heading over to the beautiful Ireland, kicking off this list. Newgrange is this massive circular tomb. It's an ancient mound, really, protruding from the earth. It's quite hard to miss. Now, the tomb is roughly 5,200 years old, meaning that this passage tomb in the Boyne Valley is older than Stonehenge and older than the Great Pyramids of Giza. That's pretty incredible. Stone Age farmers built this mound somehow, and is 85 meters in diameter and 13 meters high. Again, quite massive, hard to miss. A tomb that takes up an acre of space. Must be nice. Now, the passage and main chamber just happen to align with the rising sun on the mornings around the winter solstice. And if that's not fancy enough for you, the tomb is surrounded in a ring of large curbstones. There's actually 97 curbstones that surround Newgrange in total, and some of these are engraved with megalithic art. There's probably one that says Todd was here. Most likely. Number 9, the animal tombs. This tomb was found, of course, as you guessed, in the Valley of the Kings, but the name of the tomb is a number. What in the Elon Musk is happening? Who names their tomb a number? What? KV52, that's the official name, and it was discovered in 1906 by Edward Ayrton. Tomb KV50, KV51, and of course this one, KV52, they all together form a group referred to as the animal tombs. Hidden underneath 6 feet of debris this entire time, the entrance to KV52 was finally found. So when we enter a tomb that had been untouched ideally for thousands of years, we could find anything, right? In fact, whatever they do find is a win. It helps complete this age-long puzzle of humans' history. So when officials opened KV52 and it was pretty much empty, yeah, that doesn't feel too nice. All this time, really? It's empty? There's no treasure? Are we sure? Empty except for 2 boxes, both black and undecorated, which is a little ominous. The larger of the 2 contained the remains of a monkey, and the smaller one was a canopic chest that had 4 compartments. Number 8, Luxor Tomb. We've been saying 2,500 years ago quite often when we refer to these tombs, and don't get me wrong, that's an awful long time. But in 2014, archaeologists discovered a 4,000-year-old tomb from the 11th dynasty. It was tucked away in Luxor, Egypt this whole time. We've missed it for so long. Spanish archaeologists found a tomb belonging to a leader from the 11th dynasty. Now, it's pretty obvious that this was somebody from the royal family or somebody who was a high-ranking official of some sorts, because Luxor was the capital city of ancient Egypt at the time, and given how this tomb looked when we found it, yeah, they were pretty important. Officials believe that the tomb could have been used as a mass grave due to the large amounts of human remains found inside. Now, it's important to note that this tomb had also been used during the 17th dynasty because tools and utensils from that time, which was way later on, was found in the same tomb. Yeah, we're gonna find a spork in that tomb in 5,000 years and be like, oh yes, more ancient tools. Number 7, ancient curse. When officials found the tomb of Ankh-Mahor, aka a pharaoh official from 4,000 years ago, they also happened to find a curse. Yeah, for real, this one was written on the wall, right there. That's how you know that you're screwed. Buried in Mastaba, an above-ground massive tomb held this warning. It reads, "Might do against this, my tomb, the same shall be done to your property." And it also warns of Ankh-Mahor's knowledge of secret spells and magic, and it threatens to fill impure intruders with a fear of seeing ghosts. So if you enter this tomb, you magic, you might see some ghosts, I don't know, I'd be out of there comedically fast. You would read that and then look down and my shoes would be left there, that's it. I would be gone, my shoes would be left. Like a cartoon. Number 6. Celtic Warrior Shield. Now this one was referred to as the most important British Celtic art object of the millennium, so yeah, not a bad title, I guess. That's pretty cool. An ancient Iron Age chariot burial was discovered in Yorkshire a few years ago. And our researchers were actually excavating a house development in Pocklington. They didn't mean to find this, but then all of a sudden they find a soldier's tomb. And they're like, all right, I guess that's lunch. Are we rich? I don't know. The soldier was laid on a chariot. It was beautiful, but he had a Celtic shield laid over top. Now this shield was also dated back to 175 BC. A lot of history, lots to unpack here in an accidental tomb finding. First of all, most Iron Age shields up until this point didn't have a scalloped edge, but for some reason this one here did. We thought metal shields were only used for ceremony, but this one's been used in combat. It's been repaired and then used again, it seems. There are clear sword marks around the shield, each that tell a story. Yeah, let's just go poke around a Celtic warrior's tomb. What could possibly go wrong? Sure. Number 5. the sitting man. Back in 2005, researchers found a Mayan tomb in Honduras dating to around 650 AD. And the body was not lying down, it was actually sitting upright in a chair. Yeah, again, I would run out of that tomb comedically fast. This man was an elite member of the Mayan Empire, it seemed. He had passed away around 650 AD, and his legs were crossed, and he was rocking jade jewelry. It was a beautiful setup. The tomb had also been positioned upright, like I said, and these types of tombs, they're quite rare to find, but the fact that this one also had somebody occupying it, still sitting up, still cross-legged with their jewelry, that's beautiful. It's double rare. Usually people come in and grave rob. This is lovely. Would you ever walk into a tomb? Sound off below. This is a terrifying job. We have home funerals today that are kind of similar to this. I saw a post recently on Reddit where a guy, instead of an open casket, he was just sitting on the couch with his clothes on, like dead, as if he was still alive. And that's an interesting way to do a funeral. I don't know, it's kind of like ancient Egyptian, kind of terrifying. I don't know how I feel about it. Number 4, Paris catacombs. Of course we have to mention these ones, so haunting. Have you seen As Above, So Below? Yeah, I'm never visiting this place. These catacombs date back to the late 1700s and they're literally full of bones. So it's no surprise that some entrances and compartments have been blocked off, ideally, hopefully, forever. The catacombs' history is pretty twisted, it's pretty sick. When the city's cemeteries were filling up, and I mean that in a literal sense, officials began moving bodies all over the city, just trying to spread them out, just off the roads ideally, maybe, and hopefully to these abandoned mines. Eventually those started filling up and now we don't know what to do. But the catacombs did open in 1809, so, you know what? What a fun family excursion we have now. Let's go see the whole maze of bones. All these bodies that were occupying the land, they just stacked them up. Now it's a tourist attraction. I feel sick to my stomach. They designed the catacombs with the walls of skulls to ensure that visitors would meditate on the idea of death. Lovely, let's go home, I'm terrified. Number 3, Poland double tomb. All right, here we go, 2 in 1, time to get cozy. All around the world, there have been a handful of 2-person tombs discovered. Now, this is the only one that they found in Poland, so pretty impressive, have to mention it. Back in 2015, archaeologists discovered this 2,000-year-old necropolis that had been sitting there for centuries, just at peace. And then we came along with flashlights, and now we gotta open things up and lick rocks to see what year dates back to what and whose skull is whose, right? Whatever geologists do. Lo and behold, they were around 120 tombs in total. Yep, and now they're all awake. Awesome, here you go. Enjoy your resting, we're here now. Now you're a museum. They were used from the 1st century AD to the 3rd AD. Now among these 120 tombs were a 2 in 1, that stood out. Tombs that archaeologists referred to as princely. Pre-war's culture in Kujawi were in fact Celtic, so their burial process was also Celtic. Now it's a little odd to see a Stone Age Celtic necropolis in Poland, so yeah, it's like history just collapsed into one little ball, and then we found that ball and we're like, oh, what's in here? A lot of spiders, and let's get rich. Number 2, the Tomb of User. Back in March 2010, the Egyptian Supreme Council of Antiquities released this photo. It was a 6-foot-tall slab of pink granite and it was carved over 3,500 years ago. The door was found near a Karnak temple in Luxor, and it originally belonged to the chief minister of Queen Hatshepsut many moons ago. Now User was a high-ranking official for over 20 years, so in turn he got his own fancy tomb located on the west bank of the Nile. Egyptians associate the west with the land of the dead, so that's why they're all over here. The actual slab of granite though, this door, it was found originally far away from its home. It had been moved thousands of years later and somehow it ended up in an ancient Roman era building. Yeah, never thought I'd have to say this, people, but don't steal doors from the dead. That guy for sure got cursed. Okay. And finally, number 1, the Alexandria Black Tomb. Speaking of curses, this one's pretty heavy. We found a mysterious black granite tomb in Alexandria back in 2018. You probably remember this, right? And somebody thought it was a good idea to open it up. And it was exactly what we thought it was going to be. It was bones and sludge, and it smelled so bad everyone ran away. It was horrific. When archaeologists found this massive tomb, again, untouched for over 2,000 years, on one hand, sure, that's a great find. It's a fascinating discovery. Lovely, it's a feat in itself. But us humans, we're curious cats, right? We want to pop it open, see who or what is inside. What if it's Alexander the Great? What if it's treasure that they used to pay off everybody's student loans? Hey, who knows, right? Let's open it up. Egyptian news outlet El Watan reported that the tomb was lifted just a few centimeters before every official involved at the construction site fled the scene. Yeah, it smelled that bad. They had to run away. Mustafa Waziri, Secretary General of the Supreme Council of Antiquities, this man put his entire head in the tomb later on to show us that it is safe and not cursed. I mean, you can use your hand, you know what I mean? You can do this. You don't have to put your head in. You can just do the one hand thing. That works just as well. Maybe a foot, but straight to head dipping? Come on, Mr. Waziri. Watch The Mummy. Don't do this.
Number 10. Serpent Mound. The Great Serpent Mound is a 1,400-foot long, 3-foot high prehistoric effigy located in Peebles, Ohio, United States. Serpent Mound was first reported via surveyors Ephraim Squire and Edwin Davis and was featured in their Ancient Monuments of Mississippi book back in 1848. Looks just like a regular golf course, doesn't it? But underneath, it's perfectly placed and well-preserved earth formations that were made by hand to align with something in the sky. The mound is the largest serpent effigy in the world. Yeah, big snake. The mound itself winds back and forth for more than 800 feet with its tail coiling in 7 different areas. Tons of Clovis-era spearheads have been found that indicate interaction with other groups of ancient humans, along with the Denisovans and the Neanderthals. Archaeologists believe that the mound's creation was influenced by 2 astronomical events: the light from the supernova Crab Nebula in 1054 and Halley's Comet in 1066. The mound is also located on an ancient meteorite impact location, which makes things absolutely way scarier. In 2003, geologists from Ohio State University and Glasgow said the meteorite impact origin of the structure at Serpent Mound is the best evidence for its build and importance. Yeah, nothing crazy, just a mile-long, cosmically aligned serpent made out of rocks, made from prehistoric dudes who could barely work fire right on top of a huge impact location. Yeah. Something's fishy here. Number 9, the Terracotta Army. Hey, if you dig what we do here on Bumblebee, make sure you hit us up with a like button or comment down below which discovery in ancient history has you laying awake at night. I know mine. Let me know, I'll check it out. The Terracotta Army, don't even get me started, was first discovered in 1974 by a group of farmers east of the Queen Emperor's tomb mound at Mount Lee. For centuries, reports mentioned pieces of the terracotta fragments found, roofing tiles, bits of brick, masonry, but when they discovered heads of clay bodies, yeah, the Chinese archaeologists started to investigate and dig a little bit deeper. To this day, it remains the largest pottery group ever found on Earth. The Terracotta Army is a collection of sculptures depicting the armies of the Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China. Apparently a form of funerary art buried with the emperor around 209 BCE with the purpose of protecting him in the afterlife. 8,000 soldiers, 130 chariots, 520 horses, and 150 cavalry. Yeah. That's a lot of protection. The site is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site and has been since 1987. I'm just getting Medusa vibes when I look at this, you know? Like, I'm not convinced the actual purpose of this operation. Like, was it a front? Were they once alive? Who knows, dude? This place is mysterious. But cool. Number 8, the Antikythera mechanism. The Antikythera mechanism is an anomaly ancient computer that uses the cosmos to predict astronomical events. A group of sea sponge divers discovered the Antikythera shipwreck in early 1900 just off the island in Greece. Hence, the name. I find it funny that divers diving for something you wipe your butt with found an ancient computer just chilling down there. Something about that makes me laugh. Many think it's cursed too due to its first handlings. Apparently after its discovery, 3 of the divers who dove down died shortly after its find. 150 feet deep just off Point Glyphadia, the team retrieved millions in worth of bronze, marble, pottery, glassware, jewelry, coins, and of course, this ancient MacBook. This device is made entirely out of a single bronze sheet built within a wooden case about the size of a shoebox. Faces and cogs covered in Greek inscriptions indicating the device's astronomical calendar, purpose, use, basically everything we have on our iPhone right now within this wooden box 2,200 years ago. Yeah, again, collecting sea sponges to wipe our butts with and then just stumbling upon a computer. I don't know, someone's getting a raise, I'll say that. Number 7, the Codex Gigas. Basically translates to giant book, Codex Gigas. And it's giant. 170 pounds, it's the largest medieval manuscript in the world. Also known as the Devil's Bible. Yeah, due to the highly detailed full-page portrait of Satan himself, the demonology written within, and the legend around its initial creation. Made out of 180 donkeys, the famous myth is that the scribe traded his soul to the Prince of Darkness so that he could complete and master the contents of the universe written within this one book. Comprised in only one night. Created in the early 13th century in the Benedictine monastery of Bohemia, now modern-day Czech Republic, this book's creepy. Yeah, it contains the complete Bible, like the Old One and the New Testament, as well as everything medicinal and cosmological that a human would know at Earth at that time. All written in Latin, and of course predated glyphs, and of course missing the last 10 pages of the book. Yep, ripped out and missing. I don't know. Who knows? The book lays in the National Library of Sweden in Stockholm. I wouldn't go near it. I wouldn't read it. I wouldn't even touch it. You know, I'm good with goosebumps. That scares me enough. Number 6, the oldest map. A 4,000-year-old stone slab first discovered over a century ago in France may be the oldest known map in Europe, according to a new study. The slab dates back to the early Bronze Age, 4,000 years ago. It was first discovered in 1900 in a prehistoric burial site in Finistère, France. The engravings on the broken stone appear to resemble topographical features including hills, reference points, and river networks. The broken slab, which is 4 meters long, was moved to a private museum in France in 1924. It was then stored in a French castle where it gathered dust until it was rediscovered in the castle cellar in 2014. But only recently are researchers beginning to understand the actual importance behind this prehistoric slab rock. It's been interpreted as the oldest cartographical map in Europe. Yeah, that's old. Number 5, the Voynich manuscript. There's a giant Italian Renaissance folio called the Voynich manuscript. It's named after Wilfrid Voynich, a book dealer who purchased it in 1912, and to this day we don't really know what it is. Hands down, the most mysterious book of all time. Not only is it detailed so carefully and patiently, it's basically like a Tim Burton take on a book about life, with an entire world drawn and recorded that isn't ours. Like parallel universe type stuff. Even the language is unknown, like unknown, like predates Latin and doesn't use phonetic patterns and coding. The riddle of all riddles. Written somewhere between 1405 and 1450, all 240 pages are inscribed in some sort of indecipherable language of about 170,000 characters. Historians and cartographers have tried to crack the code for hundreds of years, yet not one has been successful. Why wasn't this a national treasure movie? I feel like this would have been perfect, like Nicolas Cage, you know? I don't know. Number 4, the Nazca Lines. The ancient, very mysterious geoglyphs that make up the soil of the Nazca Desert in southern Peru is an old one. They were created, we think, somewhere between 1000 BCE and 500 AD. Basically, people would make impressions or shallow incisions on the desert floor, removing pebbles, leaving colored dirt exposed, drawing some sort of depictions of fauna and humanoid scribbles for only those above Earth to visually see. Basically, what I'm trying to say here is that these are giant, ancient, unknown drawings you can only accurately depict from space, or from like drones hundreds of miles in the air. In the years leading up to 2020, between 80 and 100 new figures have been found with the use of drones and cameras since at least year 1900. Yo, who's drawing these things? And why is the mountain ranges so perfectly square and flat, like it's been laser cut to draw on? More than 70 designs are zoomorphic, including birds, spiders, fish, lizards, and of course, humans. Lots of different shapes and clothing and builds of humans. Interesting. It became a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1994. Yeah, I'd like to think so. I feel like this is gonna be on Art Attack. Number 3, the Mother of Dragons. Mary Anning was an English fossil collector, dealer, and paleontologist who became famously known around the world for her discoveries in Jurassic marine fossil beds in the cliffs along the English Channel at Lyme Regis in southwest England. I'm not talking about finding a tooth or something. She found 3 species of dinosaurs. Like 3 different species o dinosaur. Anning's findings contributed to a massive scientific research pushing prehistoric academia towards the future. In 1811, when Mary was only 12, she found a bizarre fossilized skull. Mary then searched for and dug the outline of its 5.2 meter long skeleton, and by the time she was done, everyone in the town knew that she had discovered something important. Scientists thought this was some sort of ancient crocodile. People were puzzled. 10 years later, she discovers a completely new skeleton of plesiosaur. 2 years later, she found one with wings. Today, the Natural History Museum in London showcases several of Mary Anning's historic finds, including her ichthyosaurus, plesiosaur, and pterosaur. Dude, there needs to be like at least 3 movies about her on Netflix, no? Like Jurassic Park, England. Number 2, Göbekli Tepe. This mysterious ancient site in the southeastern Anatolia region of Turkey is dated between 1000 and 12,000 BCE. The site comprises of a number of large man-made structures supported by massive stone megalithic pillars. Göbekli Tepe, or known simply as Potbelly Hill, is the oldest place of which megaliths were mounted. The oldest. like ever, and most confusing. Pillars richly decorated with promorphic details, clothing, wild animals, fauna, star systems. Archaeologists are puzzled, to say the least. Famous German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt views Göbekli Tepe as a Stone Age sanctuary. Radiocarbon dating indicates that it contains the oldest known ruins that holster butchered bones of not only deer, but pigs, birds, geese, fish. They've been identified as cooked food, prepared for large groups as festivals or feasts. Yeah, they don't really know exactly what this place was used for, but after finding all this academia and scientific knowledge, it's certain that this place was used by scholars of high order to either teach or study the skills of masonry, as well as the cosmos. And it's only been about a 10th discovered so far. Yeah, just about 1/10. Who knows what other secrets Göbekli Tepe has to unveil? Let's get those other 9/10ths undug, no? And the number 1 spot, ancient Greek shipwreck. The oldest ancient Greek shipwreck ever discovered in the Black Sea, and you would never guess by looking at it. This ship is from 400 BC. It's an ancient Greek trading vessel. Not huge, but somehow, this ship has been kept in almost perfect condition for over 2,400 years, a mile below the sea surface. The lack of oxygen actually preserved the ship, and that's why it looked like it sank last year and not thousands of years ago. John Adams, principal investigator with the Black Sea Archaeology Project, describes the finding as something he never thought was even possible, let alone something he'd witnessed with his own eyes in his lifetime. This discovery changed what we know about ships in the ancient world. It is to date the oldest intact shipwreck ever known to mankind. It can't be beat. This thing is older than most curses. I say pull it up, slap some paint on her, get her going again, no? Quality versus quantity back then? Things were just built to last back then.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have King Tut's cursed artifacts. We will kick off this list in the 18th dynasty. 1332 BC, King Tut was the last of his royal family to rule, and for ages now the pharaoh's treasures, politics, and social status have remained a mystery. Until recent days, it would be extremely hard to get a glimpse at some of the ancient belongings once owned by King Tut, but the new Grand Egyptian Museum has a solution. It was set to open in 2018, then finally come 2021, it did. Now, that's great, that's quite the exhibit, but the contents displayed inside certainly aren't for the faint of heart. For the first time in history, King Tut's ancient belongings, the artifacts discovered with him, will be on display. Prior to the museum being open, we only saw 150 artifacts from his tomb. They took all of the pieces on tour, but now this museum will house thousands of artifacts, the final resting place for King Tut's collection. That's over 7,000 square meters. What a display. Now, when we look back to ancient tombs, we can find many ancient curses. If you have a chance to visit the Grand Egyptian Museum, or if you saw this King Tut world tour, I'm jealous, but please don't touch anything. Just leave ancient artifacts alone, perhaps. The curses belong in history. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Tower of London. Before I dive into this one, guys, please don't forget to like this video if you're enjoying it. It does really help us out. I have been here myself. I did a little tour, took some pics. I had no idea how dark the history was here. Kings were beheaded. Queens were horribly beheaded. And on top of the already existing dark history, witnesses also say they've seen an apparition in the Tower of London. A headless ghost, maybe floating around like it's Hogwarts. How jarring is that? Hopefully no one's, just taking their head off to say good day. A common sighting is that of Thomas Becket, a martyred saint, and Anne Boleyn. If you visit the Tower of London, you might catch a glimpse of the second wife of King Henry VIII. Anne Boleyn was found guilty of treason. She had been charged with having sexual relationships with 5 others, including Lord Rochford, aka her brother, George Boleyn. She had also apparently had relations with Sir Henry Norris, the king's groom of the stool, and on top of all of this, Anne was also found guilty of conspiring to kill her husband. Now, it's since been proven that all of these claims were a bunch of rubbish. Anne wasn't even around when all of these things took place. She was still recovering from the birth of her daughter, future Elizabeth I, in October 1533. So there's no way she was fooling around with the groom of the stool. She was kind of busy. All parties involved were executed on Tower Hill in May 1536. Then 2 days later, Anne Boleyn was executed for her crimes. That didn't happen. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Terracotta Army. My least favorite mummy movie, but it's still a good time. Welcome back to Hollywood, Brendan Fraser. Let's go! The tomb of Emperor Qin Shi Huang, China's first emperor, is an unbelievable discovery. In this tomb, we can find 6,000 statues, but they all have unique carvings on their face, as if to suggest these are custom statues accurately representing a soldier. All 6,000. Back in 1974, farmers were digging a well. This was 20 miles east of Xin'an, and they stumbled upon a pit myth that helped all of this history. We believe that around 700,000 workers were putting together this masterpiece for 3 decades. Archaeologists have discovered 8,000 statues in total, with horses and chariots, the emperor's tomb of course. A grim detail here is that in the emperor's tomb, streams of mercury were put around the floor of his burial chamber, and in 2005 over 4,000 samples tested positive for mercury, so to this day less than 1% of the tomb has been excavated. It's simply just too dangerous. The emperor believed that after he had passed he would have to face the spirits of his enemies, so he wanted to be prepared, even after death. The emperor decided to close the tomb before the workers even had a chance to get out. He was worried that his enemies had found out, so there was lots of statues and dark histories in this one. In our number 7 spot today we have Highgate Cemetery. Heading over to England yet again, London's Highgate Cemetery is beautiful, but back in the early 1800s it was booming. The city's population was growing, meaning more people were dying. We needed more land for bodies, graves were being placed in between houses and shops, so Parliament built 7 cemeteries to help out. The third, built in 1839, was Highgate. Come 1854 the cemetery was full. It was beautiful, everyone wanted to be buried there. An odd desire, but look at it. How inviting is that? It was so popular that they added another 20 acres. More bodies, let's do it. No worries, keep piling them on. By the time World War II came along, the cemetery was completely abandoned. In 1960 the cemetery was officially closed, buildings began to fall onto themselves, the landscaping is just a mess. It certainly looks the part now. Today many stories are passed around of these men in dark robes. They're said to practice dark rituals in Highgate. It's not uncommon to see apparitions in the cemetery, but red-eyed demons? Highgate is just another level. In our number 6 spot today we have Newgrange Tomb. Okay, time to get wild. Over in Ireland there's a tomb built by Egyptians. It's called Newgrange. It's as old as the pyramid, so the belief is that Egyptians also built this. It was first discovered back in the late 1700s, but it's been closed ever since. It's a mystery who or what is inside, but the folklore surrounding the tomb is too good not to include on this list. Locals believe the tomb is a gateway to another realm and that it was built by goblins. If and when this tomb is opened, it's believed goblins will come rushing out. Evil goblins, that is. I didn't know that there was another kind. Are there good goblins? Does that exist? I certainly hope that this doesn't happen. Maybe it's Alexander the Great, maybe they buried him impossibly out of the way, or maybe it is full of goblins. I simply just don't know. In our number 5 spot today we have Bangor Fort. Back in the 16th century, King Maddo built the massive Bangor Fort in India. The population of this small town was around 1,000. It was a beautiful fort. Many considered this place a luxury. Rightfully so though, it looks like a set piece from Game of Thrones. Legend has it that Princess Ratnavati, who at the time was living in the luxurious fort, was the talk of the town. Dudes were proposing left, right, and center. Princes from all over would come in and try to take her hand in marriage. One day when visiting town, a magician saw the princess shopping for perfumes, so he planned on using black magic on the princess. He mixed it with perfume that she was admiring, but it didn't work. The princess smashed the perfume, and as the bottle broke apart, the magician then cursed the entire fort and those living inside of it, which is really the only reasonable response, you weirdo. Only days later, a war erupted around the fort and there were many casualties. To this day, Bangor Fort is said to be extremely haunted. In our number 4 spot today we have the Crooked Forest. Forests are already creepy, but this one looks like it's straight out of a Tim Burton film. The Crooked Forest is in Poland. There's around 400 odd-shaped pine trees near the town of Gryfino. These trees are said to be about 90 years old, and all of the trees from the base, they immediately bend towards the north and then they slowly curved back towards the sky like other trees. Despite this odd bend, these trees are otherwise healthy. There's been so many theories, but none of them really stick. Some suggest it was a gravitational anomaly, but that's a little too far-fetched for me. I don't know. This isn't Interstellar, is it? Other theories claim that there were heavy snowfalls that would weigh the branches down, which could check out, but why is it just a select amount? I've lived in Canada my entire life. I'm from the prairies, like the snowiest of all the places. We have so much snow, and I've never seen a Sleepy Hollow tree. Alright, my favorite theory is that farmers were trying to make the tree curved on purpose to make stronger wheels because the grain direction would make for the natural curved wheels. Again, nobody knows for sure. What are your thoughts? Do we like the wheel theory? I'm gonna keep a spare tree tire just in case. I'll keep it stored safely in the trunk. In our number 3 spot today, we have Huska Castle. According to folklore, Huska Castle, which is located in the north of Prague in the Czech Republic, is built over a bottomless hole that leads directly to hell. The legends claim that the 13th century King Ottokar II offered a pardon to any prisoner who agreed to be lowered into the pit in order to report what was down there. The first prisoner who was lowered into the pit only lasted 30 seconds before he started screaming in fear. Sounds pretty horrible. No way I'd volunteer as tribute. Legend goes that when he was brought back up, his hair had turned white, and apparently he saw these half-human, half-demon creatures that flew through the darkness with scaly wings. The castle was built over the hole without things like a water source or any kitchens, and it is said that this was because it wasn't actually meant to be used by humans, but rather a place to capture the demons should they choose to rise from this mysterious hole. Even demons have a place to crash now. How nice is that? In our number 2 spot today, we have the Turkey Gladiator Arena. Ah yes, another arena, another staple in history filled with gruesome combat in the name of entertainment. Gladiator 2 was confirmed by director Ridley Scott, so who knows, there's a chance we may see another Gladiator arena like this one in the sequel. An 1800-year-old arena was discovered back in 2020 while we were all stuck inside watching Carol Baskin. They found another Gladiator arena. This is so exciting on one hand, but the history that lies here, not so pleasant. Its purpose was thought to be the same as the Colosseum, to host these massive professional gladiator bouts with wild animals making a cameo here and there. This arena was active, we guess, around 200 AD when the Severan dynasty was ruling the Roman Empire. If betting on animal fights was your thing, you'd travel to this place. Hope you have trail shoes and great knees. I'm weak just looking at those hills. In our number 1 spot today, we have the Valley of the Kings. We started off this list in ancient Egypt, so we might as well finish there. After all, when it comes to ancient mysteries or ancient curses, Egypt still has so much to offer. It is said that any thieves who dare enter or disturb the slumber of the deceased kings shall be cursed and shall perish. Well, this applies to archaeologists too. Howard Carter and his team back in the 1920s had come across the discovery of a lifetime, finding the tomb of King Tut, launching the study of Egyptology. We're still finding tombs in Egypt to this day. That place is a literal treasure chest. The thing is though, after the discovery, some researchers on Carter's team started to feel under the weather. Maybe there was a bug going around, maybe it was too hot, or maybe it was just the curse of the pharaohs. Some men on his team perished from blood diseases or undisclosed circumstances. Many of these ancient tombs have warnings, and I think it might be time we start listening to those.
Number 10, false doors. Okay, right off the bat, imagine searching for a lost Egyptian tomb, alright? Imagine you've spent years of your life dedicating to this research, and then you find a door. You find an entrance carved into the wall, and this is it. What lies beyond? It's time. You try and carefully open it with a team of archaeologists, but it won't budge, because it's a fake door. It's a false door. Yeah, just a Looney Tunes door. Somebody juked you out 4,500 years ago. Gotcha. Their spirit's been waiting that long to be like, nice, idiot. Alright, we can go home. We're good. False doors in Egyptian tombs were quite common in ancient Egyptian times. But if we look elsewhere throughout history, we find false doors in ancient Rome, in both tombs and the interior of homes, so that ought to be confusing for any house guests back then. It's also important to note that Egyptian culture was influenced by Mesopotamian architecture, so we've had fake doors around for a while now. A lot of confusing people for thousands of years. Ancient Egyptians believed that these false doors were a connection to the dead, and that spirits were able to travel here and there throughout living and death. Most false doors can be found on the West Wall because Egyptians believed the West to be the land of the dead. Number 9. The Tomb of Uzer. Back in March 2010, the Egyptian Supreme Council of Antiquities released this photo. This 6-foot-tall slab of pink granite was carved over 3,500 years ago, and this door was found near Karnak Temple in Luxor, and originally it belonged to the chief minister of Queen Hatshepsut back in the 15th century. Now, Uzer was a high-ranking official and held the position of vizier for 20 years at that time, so in turn, he got his own fancy tomb located on the west bank of the Nile. Remember, Egyptians associate the West with the land of the dead. That's going to come in quite a few times in this video. The actual slab of granite, this door, was found far away from its home. It had been moved thousands of years later and ended up in an ancient Roman era building. Never thought I'd have to say this, but don't steal doors from the dead. Got it? Okay, let's move on. Number 8, Alexandria Black Tomb. What if we found a tomb and then just opened it, What if we found a mysterious black granite tomb in Alexandria, say back in 2018? Do you think it would be wise to just open it because we're curious? Spoiler alert, we opened it and it was exactly what we thought it was going to be. When archaeologists found this massive tomb untouched for over thousands of years, on one hand, yeah, that's a feat in itself, but us humans, we're curious creatures. We just gotta just a little peek just to see who's in there. I mean, after all, it could be Alexander the Great, right? That's the whole point of all this. Egyptian news outlet El Watan reported that the tomb was lifted only a few centimeters before every official involved at that construction site just fled the scene. They straight up just ran away. It smelled that bad. Mustafa Waziri, Secretary General of the Supreme Council of Antiquities, this guy put his entire head in the tomb just to show us that it's safe. That's great. I mean, you could use your hand, maybe even a foot, I guess, just a little foot dip, but straight to the head dipping? Come on, Mr. Waziri, be smart about this. Number 7, Valley of the Kings. While March 2020 wasn't the best month of all time by any means, Egyptian officials did locate a secret vault hiding in the sands of the Valley of the Kings in Egypt. Just off the west bank of the Nile, the Valley of the Kings, as its name hints towards, is a pretty historical part of Egypt's past. Again, do we want to open this vault? Probably not, but did we? Yes. Bones and goo and history. What do you know? Surprise, surprise. Number 6, 2020 tombs. Summer 2020, nice. While most of us was stuck inside watching Netflix, more than 100 sealed coffins were found. And yes, they were occupied for the most part. Found, of course, in Saqqara, Egypt, Egyptian archaeologists have never been more excited. Maybe we'll find the body of Cleopatra. Wouldn't that just be dandy? The fact that we found over 100 of these still in great shape is mind-blowing. Grave robbers have been around since ancient Egyptian days, and for all of these to be untouched for this long is honestly unbelievable. These findings date back to 712 BC, which was a period where Egypt was controlled by foreign civilizations. That's what makes this so insane. Like Persians and Greeks, they were all around at this time. The idea that we're finding mummies is great and all, but again, do we need to open all of them up? Maybe there's treasure, maybe there's bodies. Either way, it's not yours. Am I insane? Maybe I'm insane. Do we need to find Alexander the Great this badly that we're willing to disrespect this many souls in the process? Number 5, Luxor Tomb. We've been saying 2,500 years ago, and don't get me wrong, that's an awful long time to go. But in 2014, archaeologists discovered a 4,000-year-old tomb from the 11th dynasty, tucked away in Luxor, Egypt, of course, as this list says. Spanish archaeologists found a tomb belonging to a leader from the 11th dynasty, and it's pretty obvious that this was somebody from the royal family or somebody who was a high-ranking official, because at the time, Luxor was the capital city of ancient Egypt, and officials also believe this tomb could have been used as a mass grave. The important thing to note here is that the tomb had also been used during the 17th dynasty because tools and utensils from that later time were also found in this grave. We're gonna find a spork in 5,000 years and be like, ah yes, ancient tools, interesting. Number 4, 210 sarcophagi. So we thought it was a pretty big deal when 160 bodies were recently discovered in Egypt. This was back in September 2020. Over 160 coffins were found. Wild, right? Well, those are rookie numbers, turns out. For this one, archaeologists found 210 sarcophagi near Queen Nefertiti's funerary temple in the city of the dead, Saqqara. Yeah, there were over 160, surprise. Maybe next time you check in with us, that number will be even higher. Who knows? Hopefully, / maybe hopefully not. I don't know how I feel about this. This was January 2021. We probably would have seen it on the news, but that was when 768 people were storming the Capitol, so the news was a bit busy, I guess. Thanks. These sealed coffins were untouched for thousands of years. They went from finding 160 to finding 210. That's incredible. According to the ministry, the sarcophagi were completely closed and haven't been opened since they were buried at all. They opened a few though, of course, just to analyze and display them, but that's it. Yeah, leave the rest. I'm not focused on ancient curses or Brendan Fraser having to come out and save the day. Just let dead people lay where they are. Let them rest. The amount of effort gone into hiding and preserving their memory alone, I mean, look how long it's taken for us to even find these things. It's almost like they didn't want to be found. Number 3, the ancient curse. The walls of some of these tombs have warnings from the gods, which is a lot. One of them warning trespassers that the gods will wring their neck like that of a goose. Also, if I walked into somebody's property now and it said trespassers' necks will be wrung out like a goose, I would turn back. I wouldn't want to investigate further. I would just walk away. You don't need to be an ancient god to get that message across, you know what I mean? But inside the found tomb of the Vizier Ankh-Amor, a pharaoh's official from 4,000 years ago, a curse was written. Buried in a mastaba, an above-ground massive tomb, was this warning. Might do against this, my tomb, the same shall be done to your property. It also warns of the Vizier's knowledge of secret spells and magic, and threatens to fill impure intruders with a fear of seeing a ghost. Yeah, there's that, or beware of dog. I don't know, you can pick which is more impactful on your property, sure. Number 2, the animal tombs. This tomb was found, as you may have guessed, in the Valley of the Kings. you're getting good, nice. But this one doesn't sound like the rest. I mean, for starters, it's a number rather than a name. What in Elon Musk is happening here? Whose name was a number, huh? KV52 was discovered in 1906 by Edward Ayrton. Tomb KV50, KV51, and this one, KV52, they all form a group referred to as the animal tombs. Underneath 6 feet of debris, the entrance to these vaults were found, so when we enter this tomb, specifically KV52, that's been untouched, ideally for thousands of years, we can look forward to finding anything. In fact, whatever we do find, it's a win. It helps complete this age-long puzzle. So when officials opened KV52 and it was completely empty, well, that doesn't feel too nice. Something here is wrong. It was empty except for 2 boxes. Both were black and undecorated, which is odd considering what we've learned on this list. The larger of the 2 contained the remains of a monkey, and the smaller one was a canopic chest that had 4 compartments in it. Hauntingly bare compared to what else we've seen on this list, but it gets a little better. We're not done yet. Finally, number 1, Queen Nefertiti's hidden chamber. When researchers are 90% sure about something, that's a pretty good sign. You only say you're 90% sure of something when you know for sure. You leave 10% in case anything else goes wrong out of your control, right? 90%, that's confident, we got this. So when Egyptian authorities said they're 90% sure there's a hidden chamber in King Tut's tomb, well, we got a little jazzed. Got some jazz hands going on. Not gold, jazz hands. Back in 2015, a paper was published on the burial of Queen Nefertiti. Archaeologist Nicholas Reeves argued that while conducting scans on the ancient site, Reeves found what resembled traces of doors beneath the plaster. Now, it's been considered previously by archaeologists that King Tut's mask, having ear piercings and all, suggests that at that time, that tomb and that death mask was actually meant for Queen Nefertiti, not King Tut. But because King Tut died suddenly when he was 19, plans had to quickly change. 90% sure is good enough for me. What do you guys think? Comment down below all your thoughts.